Hi, and welcome to What's Up With That, the Denver Waldorf School podcast, where we talk about all the things that are happening here in the school and what they mean. So my name is Kelly Molinet. I'm the school director, and today we have with us two of our high school staff members to talk about what's up with college, what's up with how we prepare our students for college, what's up with all the things you might be worrying about for college. So I'm going to have my colleagues introduce themselves and we'll get going with what's up with college.
Hey, my name's Adam Newman. I teach maths and physics in the high school.
And my name is Meeri Baldwin. I'm the Next Steps Coach in the high school, which is effectively college and post-secondary counseling.
Awesome. Well, I think if you've heard me talk about the thousands of teenagers I've raised, I've been in the college process for a long time. What it means, what it looks like. I've had children in different educational environments, and then most recently had a graduate from this school, and really do have the perspective of how different his preparation was, his support was, and his experience as a college student. So I'm excited to talk about this, but also Meeri, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about what Next Steps is, because even though I work with you and I think you do a great job, I don't know that I do a great job of talking about what you're doing.
Sure. So the Next Steps program is a 4-year through the span of high school program that our students get to engage in. And what that means in reality is that I have all 4 grades, all 4 years of high school. So I have protected time in class with 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th at different times of the year and for different amounts of the year based on their level. We're talking about different things, right? So we're talking about professional communication and this idea of skills being transferable, that what you might want to do right now is great, but it might not be what you want to do in 6 years or in 2 years or in 2 minutes. So what that might look like. But I think one of the crux of it when it comes to college counseling is that I am getting to know all of the students early on. So I have a built up relationship and rapport with them before we're even starting to talk about college. I have an indication and an idea of who these students are, what they're interested in, what their academic strengths are, what their extracurricular activities are, and what they're passionate about. So in the junior and senior year, that does get a little more specific, talking about colleges and gap years and other experiences that they might want to do right when high school ends. And to get into the weeds a little bit, the 11th grade specifically starts really doing the college visits that are here at school. So we bring in about 30 plus colleges every fall. And our juniors are really encouraged to go to those, to hear about these schools. And then in the spring, we start writing their personal essays. So they are getting all of the time in my class as protected time to do different activities and brainstorming sessions to start writing those. And then to get feedback ongoing throughout the spring and the summer, ready to go for early fall.
I remember in the fall, my son was in Mr. Mills' class. And I think you're familiar with the struggle of my son, who had too much to say. He had to have a perfect essay, and he had 14 versions of it. And I am generally non-stressed about college, and I was starting to get stressed. I was like, oh my gosh, we're not going to get this in. But it being an assignment in Mr. Mills' class with a deadline was really supportive and got the stress out of my kitchen and into Mr. Mills' classroom, where it had a different flavor. So I think that's pretty unique that it's part of their classwork with the same kind of academic support around writing structure or voice or whatever, with all the prep that you've put into it. I think that's really unique.
Yeah, so I'm able to also work with Mr. Mills, our English teacher, Miss Gray, who's doing a writing lab actually right now with juniors, so that all 3 of us are on the same page about what does a personal narrative in this regard look like. And so that we're kind of all coming at them from the same language.
I want to talk a little bit, we'll probably come back to some of the specific things that happen from your office. And, as the Next Steps counselor, you do function in much of the role of a guidance counselor and then some. So when people are maybe thinking about their own school experiences that weren't Denver Waldorf, that you are the guidance counselor plus.
Yeah.
A lot, like a lot.
Yeah.
But Adam, I'm just, you have these students in class for 4 years, and, you hold advisory. And I think that a really important part of young adults' journey to college is knowing where they want to go and what they want to do. And how does your relationships with the kids, or the time that you get to spend with them, really support them in knowing themselves a little better, and also the adults knowing them better, the adults that are giving advice?
Yeah, I think that when we receive them in 9th grade, because we have, just a small group of students in each grade, our number one goal is to get to know them to the best of our ability. And that's just through just constant conversation with them during class, finding out what their interests are. I try to tailor what I teach and the content that we do as much as possible to their interests so that they can be engaged. And a lot of that comes in, asking them what they might want to do after high school, and just like helping them figure out the things that they like, the things that they don't like, and where their strengths lie. I think a big part of our curriculum is that, especially when they went through our K through 8, I think that one thing that they do in the grades really well is cultivating a love of learning in the students. And so when they get to high school, we continue to cultivate that love of learning, but the high school student developmentally, the thing that we want to be cultivating in them is their individuality. And so how that looks is by giving them as many opportunities to express themselves and to individuate. And maybe one student wants to build something for a project, or one student wants to do something a bit more academic, like a research paper. And we really give them the freedom to explore these different avenues. Like, I can think of a student off the top of my mind where, when they had this creative freedom to choose how they kind of presented their knowledge in a physics block for me, I had one student who said to me, I know I would do well in the project in terms of a grade if I did something that was more academic, but I actually want to push myself and build something with my hands. And I was just like, go for it, do it. And he has been doing more and more of that, and trying more avenues where he can just really explore himself as a person. I think the fact that they feel so supported here means that they feel more willing to try different things out, and that helps them navigate who they are as a person, and not just further restrict themselves, and put themselves in a little box and just say that's all I'm able to do, and I'm just not going to bother trying anything else.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big limitations of some other forms of high school education, where if you're the student or you're the parent, your entire educational journey is represented by a grade in a class or a credit, and it starts to be the story about you. Your transcript has this meaning. And here, I know you have extra work trying to translate all of the curriculum that we do into these college applications, because you're not just submitting a number or a letter. You're doing an incredible lift of translating everything we do. And sometimes the extracurricular things on the applications were not in fact extracurriculars here, but you are helping the children, kind of the teenagers, pull apart their educational experience and be like, actually you did theater, actually you did art, and maybe you can talk about that a little, because I know you've had to pull out some hair trying to make our transcripts make sense.
Yeah. Our transcripts are, if nothing else, much longer than those of other schools, because our students take so many courses and have so many credits every year. And one thing that's really this beautiful benefit to that, though, is that schools, colleges across the United States are increasingly looking to have students who are academically sound, but also students who are talented and who have tried different things, and who know how to engage with other people, right? They're recognizing that that's something that they want on their campus. So a lot of times I'm talking to students about that is, yeah, of course, you might think you took the musical and that was an elective, but I'm like, let's talk about what all that really embodied and how much you did outside of the class time in order to fulfill those things. So when our students are leaving and they've done choir and they were in the orchestra and they did woodworking projects beyond woodworking as a course, really helping them navigate what that looked like beyond just their typical curriculum and how much they engaged in those things, because it's a real benefit for them as human beings, and also it's a benefit when colleges are looking for students who are talented.
What you said about projects and presentations reminds me of this picture of the spiral curriculum we have in Waldorf, where in 4th grade they're doing an animal project, I think, and in 5th grade they're doing a state project, and then in 8th grade we have a big cumulative 8th grade project. 11th grade they're out in the world doing internships, and then of course the senior project. And I think even for people in our community who've been here a long time in the grades, I don't think we can talk enough about 11th grade internships and 12th grade senior projects, so please talk about them.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of my job, certainly. So we'll start with juniors. At the end of their junior year, they get to do this 2-week practicum at a place of their choosing. So in a career or field that they are interested in. So that is across the board really different. So students who are at law offices, a video game studio, a veterinary office, a marketing agency doing graphic design. And they're really getting 2 weeks of individual practical experience in these jobs that they feel they might be interested in, which is incredible because it gives some students who have always thought they wanted to do this even more reassurance that, yeah, I love this. This is what I'm called to. And it gives some students the reality part of the job, which is, wow, that's not for me. It's not what I thought that looked like.
What about leading up to that? Because I remember my son being pretty clear, and I talk about it. I'm glad he doesn't watch this podcast or doesn't know how much I talk about his experience, but it's all positive. But, you know, he was unworried until he was worried. There's just the process of choosing a place, emailing the place, reaching out. Like I kept being like, son, are you going to email the place that you're 100% sure you're going to intern with? That's a huge life skill that you talked about earlier, professional communication.
Yeah. So luckily, now that I have them this whole time, we work on professional communication really early on, but right now I'm kind of in the thick of that with the juniors currently, is them reaching out to places. So we go over in class, what does that look like? Write a sample email to this potential practicum provider and let's talk about it. What looks really good there? What maybe could be taken aback? And then during the same kind of follow-up conversations, when that person responds to them and says, yeah, let's hop on a call, where students can't be curating that as much. So it's great when students and I are able to talk about that. So we can be like, well, let's do a mock call right now. We'll sit in my office and we'll do that to practice. What is it that I'm going to be able to say? What might they ask me? And I love seeing them really kind of rise to the occasion. I feel like so often here they are in these positions where they can't hide from adults in this building. So they end up having to speak to adults pretty frequently. And that in some ways really helps prepare them for these internships and the conversations that are leading up to it, because that's something they are more comfortable with.
What kind of feedback do you get from the host places? I've never asked you that. What do they say about our kids?
They love them. They're super impressed also oftentimes by their level of being able to communicate with an adult in a normal way, about them being prompt and on time. And I always ask them, would you take another student? You know, can I send somebody to you next year? And by and large, they're saying yes. Please send them your way, because we know they're prepared for what's coming.
If somebody in the DWS community, maybe a parent of a kindergartner or a second grader, is listening right now, can they reach out to you and say, I'd love to have a 11th grader at my business?
Please reach out to me. I would love that. So many times students have these really great ideas, and what we're trying to do is connect them with somebody. So please send me an email, come swing by my office. I would love to keep your information. So as soon as a student says, oh, I am interested in finance, great. I have somebody who would love to connect with you.
Awesome. Senior projects, they're a highlight They're pretty crazy. My kid, I feel it was life-changing. I have, I think I've said this before, I had a Waldorf kid who never got to go to Waldorf until I found this place, and he came in 11th grade. And he is an artist and a creative person. It has nothing to do with class. It's who he is. And I think he was raised, well, his father is a professional artist, but raised by me, who's the queen of the working class. I'm like, thou shalt get a job that pays thee. And, you know, I think he always felt that tension. And his senior project really changed his life, because he now is in art history and museum studies major in college with the absolute confidence that he can be an artist and get a paycheck and make both of his parents happy. So, like, how is it for other kids? Like, why do we do it? What does it look like? And how is it different from you've had experience in other schools? So.
Sure. So our senior projects really start at the end of junior year, and there are not a ton of limitations into what these students are able to do. We ask them to give us a proposal. What is it that you want to work on for the span of a year? And it does need to be, one thing we do ask is that it's a stretch, right? It's not more of the same. So if you have been painting, you know, beautiful oil paintings for the last few years, and you say, that's what I'm going to do, that's not much of a stretch. So we do ask for them to do something new, for them to engage in something that they find interesting. And that's where it really runs the gamut of what students are doing. So we have students who, currently in our senior class, we have a student who has been really, you know, into baking and cooking, and decided to make their own catering company and really pivot towards that, making orders for large groups, for small orders, do the business side of that, the marketing side of that, I have to have this done by this deadline part of that, and see that growth. We have students who are creating video games, and really learning how to code and do the animation with it, so that one product is made. And if you have any idea about coding and animation, it is
it's intense,
really intense and time consuming. But we also have students who are working with doctors and doing shadow experiences in that regard. Somebody who's written and directing a short film of theirs that they've created the storyline for. They're working with somebody in that business, because we asked them to get a mentor in that regard. So it's something that they get to work on kind of as their own side passion project. But one we also know is they're going to run into hurdles. There's going to be times where they're like, this is not what I expected. This is really hard. I don't know where to go from here. And really asking them to work through that struggle and build that grit around it is a really huge part of the senior projects.
So I love that. I feel like this feeds into something I wanted to talk to you about, Adam, as a class teacher and a Waldorf teacher. What are the things, besides you already spoke a bit about in math and physics, the kinds of work the kids do, but what are we building? What kind of humans are we building? What are some of the qualities we're building in kids through our curricular choices, through our pedagogy, to produce kids who are going to be successful in college and successful in their future? What do we got?
Well, I think the primary goal and intention of our education is to create, you know, free thinking, healthy human beings, right? And so we base everything around that. We don't base it around, like, what do we think they're gonna need to look impressive to get into college, for example, right? We're not starting with that. But what I tend to find is, in just the schools that I've worked at, that if you're fixated on what colleges are asking or looking at, like right now, odds are in 5 years there'll be something different.
True.
And so if you keep chasing that, I actually think that you end up not really producing students that are that impressive. And so we really focus on them being able to think for themselves. They're able to form their own opinions and stand behind those opinions and make cases. I think, you know, on the side of that, like Meeri was already talking about, be able to see an adult or a teacher as a human being who cares about them, and be able to look them in the eye and come to them when they need help, how to advocate for themselves, find resources, all these different things. And I've worked in colleges before, and I've taught college students, and I've had conversations with people in those sectors, and they tell me that, you know, the thing that they struggle with is that more and more they have students who just, you know, avoid classes, don't seek out help, don't seek out the resources that they need, you know, struggle to collaborate with each other on projects and that kind of thing. And so I think that what Waldorf Education has been doing for quite some time is producing students who, by the time they get to graduation, they are able to know themselves well enough that they can start to seek out what they think they need and what they want, and have the confidence to go to people and feel secure in their relationships with other people about how they can go about finding their way in life, really. And so a lot of it is just giving them the tools to be able to figure out the solutions to their problems in whatever that is. And I don't think that you do that by trying to think of all of the possible problems that could come up and then teach the individual solution to each of those problems. It's to give the students as much practice as possible in confronting a problem and then supporting them in finding their own solution to that problem. And so I've had situations where, you know, we don't put all of our effort in like teaching to the SAT as an example. But I've had students who've come to me after their SAT and they've told me that they had a question asked of them in the middle of the exam. They'd never seen any problem like that before, and they in real time were able to, you know, regulate themselves and think, okay, what do I know? What am I able to find out? How can I find out what I need to find out? And then we're able to solve the problem. And that was a really, I think, pivotal moment for that student, where they were like, okay, I could get confronted with any problem. It doesn't have to just be academic, and I can figure it out. It's not just about having a kind of pre-baked solution in my memory that I can just retrieve and apply to something.
I think about when my kid got to college this fall and came home maybe 2 or 3 weeks in, and he was like, I feel like I'm the only person raising my hand in class. Should I be the only one talking? And I'm like, well, I appreciate the, you know, modulating whether you're, monopolizing conversations or not. But friend, you're paying for this. So yes, I encourage you to speak as much as you would like to in class. And I've heard that feedback a lot from, I'm sure you have, from kids who return or from people in college environments, that kids who come out of our school are participating and have something to say and are really making use of all of this money that those of us who are paying for it are putting forward for this education.
Yeah, over and over they're saying, well, I went up on the first day to introduce myself to this professor. Nice. I'm like, okay, nice. As you should. Nice. So really, they're so used to that level of engagement that they can't really shy away from in our education here. So that it's become so second nature for them to be that engaged in learning and in their own movement in life. And I'm so grateful that they're taking that and kind of running with it.
And I also find that I've gone to so many different kind of teacher training sessions where like people from colleges or even people from industry will talk about, okay, what are the needs of industry and that kind of thing. And because the work environment and that affects, the college environment is just changing ever more rapidly, they tend to say that the people who tend to do well are people who are able to think flexibly and just be able to pivot. And if needs change, you're able to change and then learn new skills. It's not about having all of the skills that you could need by the time you graduate. It's having the tools to be able to acquire new skills on your own.
I have one more kind of picture that does come from my child entering this education, and also the lens I have of my older children having done mostly very well in school in very different environments. My oldest children went to public school in New York. They all went to college, they did well. But I feel like the picture they had of themselves as a learner. My oldest son, science and math, quick, bright, everything happened fast for him. Did not develop strong study skills or work ethic because he didn't really need to, even in a lot of advanced classes. That caused him some stress at SUNY Binghamton when he arrived. But he figured it out, you know, we didn't die of it, but it definitely was a surprise for him. What kind of, how to work surprised him. And then some of my other children felt early on in school what they were good at, that they knew what they were good at. So I didn't have kids by the time they got to high school be like, maybe I'll do this instrument, or maybe I'll be in a play. I feel like who they entered high school as, they continued on successfully and happily. I bring my kid here, and he had been in 9th grade. For him was COVID, or 8th grade, I forget, because it was all a blur of, you know, COVID. He lost an immense amount of confidence in math. He's smart enough, conscientious-ish, so we all know my kid. But here, he couldn't just say, I'm not good at math and I'll just get a C and I'll whatever. He was in your class and he sweated a little bit, and maybe you did too. But then he fell. I remember riding home with him one day and he goes, I'm ready for college math. And that makes me feel a little emotional to see. I know him, you know, like in as much of his stress he might have shown you, I saw a lot more of it at home. So a kid who had absolute confidence in his ability to write and speak and be an artist left your classroom feeling like, I can do college math. And he did. And he got an A in his first semester. And he's never taking math again. I'm sorry. But he did. So like, talk about how did you make that happen in a small, is it a small class? Is it the time? Is it you're funny, they love you? Like, what is it?
All of the above.
Is it you? No, I'm kidding.
Well, firstly, I just can't agree with anyone to say that they're not a math person. I think that, you know, there are so many different areas that it'd be like saying, I don't do language. It's like, well, you speak, you have to communicate, right? Yeah. And I think that people, because they speak and they communicate so much in their day-to-day, that it just is like, no one's like, oh, I don't do words. It's like, well, you have to do words, right? And so I would say that the same is true for math. I think that there are so many different areas. Like right now I'm doing conic sections with the 9th grade, which is like, if someone just walked in on a tour and they looked at it, they'd be like, why are they drawing shapes in like a math class? But they don't realize that there's like a lawfulness there. And, you know, the difference between this being an art class and this being a math class is that I can look at it and be like, that's wrong. Which, you know, there is an objective truth to what they are creating, even though it's aesthetically pleasing, right? And then on the other side, you know, right now I'm doing data science with the seniors, where they're, you know, exploring this whole area of math where there actually is not necessarily one right answer, right? That the way that you present mathematical information can have bias, right? And that you, in trying to tell a story using math, you can intentionally leave information out to try and tell something, and that's where your own bias can come in. And so maths can really infiltrate so many different areas of life. And you know, I think when people talk about math, they're usually thinking algebra, right? At least in high school, right? And so when they say, oh, I'm not a math person, they just tend to be people that struggle with algebra.
I'm not a geometry person. Am I allowed to say that?
Adam says no.
Yeah.
Like, you don't do shapes? Yeah. Okay, I'm sure we can have this argument offline.
And then even how geometry class might look in different schools might look very different, right?
I think it does.
And then so we have, you know, students who are typically the students who would say, oh, I'm not a math person, and they struggle with, usually it's algebra. And then they get to projective geometry in 11th grade, and there are like no numbers, and there's no letters. It's literally just drawing lines and marking points. And it's this whole area of math that was created after perspective drawing started to come out in the Renaissance time. And anyway, that is still math, right? And still, I can look at a construction that someone has made and say, this is wrong, or there are mistakes here and there, right? And so, but then those students, usually the script is flipped. The students who often have a lot of negative self-talk around math are the people who are just immediately getting it, and they're helping the students who historically are the people that they considered were the ones who were really good at math. And so I think we give students so many opportunities to experience maths in different ways that they can see that this is all maths, and there are specific parts of it that they struggle with, like someone in a language class might say, oh, I struggle with grammar, right? But they can see that it's not binary. It's not math or no math, right? There are so many different areas. And then I think, with all of that, that's the curriculum side of it. I, just get to know them, and they know that, this is really just a process of making mistakes and improving. And I don't think it's as high stakes as they tend to build up in their minds, right? We're just learning here. And, it's a lot easier if we're having fun. And yeah.
I think the process for me as an educator and a parent, I've had kids who were mostly good students, but they were in a class where we're progressing through a standardized curriculum. I got a 71 on this and we're moving on. I know with my kid that there were some moments that were 71 and you sat with him and said, we're going to keep going with this because I want you to have proficiency and I'm offering you mastery. And so he was encouraged to sit in the content with someone who he trusted to continue to learn it. Whereas in a math class in a different place, they would have moved on and that's the grade you got in that unit. And then, you just kind of take your losses and move on and hope you can do extra credit or some nonsense. But that was the situation with my kid, that you sat with him and said, we're going to keep learning this.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's like worth the tuition right there. Like that's actual teaching my child, not teaching the curriculum.
Right.
That's what you were doing.
Well, and I think this is a good example of what we actually mean when we say that the students are the curriculum, is that if the number one goal is their learning and their development, if you're just, it kind of boggles my mind how if your focus is on the content, when really the whole primary role of education is educating children and them learning, how can the person learning get in the way of the learning? Like, when you have students who get frustrated with teachers getting frustrated with students, it's like, yes, but the goal is for them to learn. So how are they the human being getting in the way of the content? They are the content.
Okay.
So yeah, and again, our number one goal is for them to develop capacities. And so we will just we'll meet them where they're at, and then we'll just continue to work from there and develop their capacities. And I think because we are so available to the students, Meeri, I see her here with students before school starts, and I see her here with students after school ends, right? And I think, that level of availability applies in so many different avenues with so many different teachers that, we're happy to just like sit in the mud with the students and be like, you've got someone here with you and let's just navigate this journey together. We're not going to do it for you, right? But we're going to sit in the mud with you, make it not hurt so much, not make it so difficult, and you won't feel lonely in the process.
Nice. Before we go, how do letters of recommendation for college stand out from the Denver Waldorf School in a way that they might not in certainly a larger environment or in an environment where teachers don't have longitudinal relationships with the humans?
Yeah, I think that's the key, right? Is that our students are having this continuity of a teacher. So that teacher can speak to them in that subject and how that growth has occurred over time, really specific moments where they shined or that they grew, but also that our teachers so well can speak to who that student is, even beyond just in maths or in physics, but can speak to who that student is as a humanities student and who they are as a performer and who they are as a human being. So over and over again, they stand out. And mostly it's people like Adam and I talking about, how are we going to keep this letter at one page? Yeah. We have 8 pages of amazing things to say about these kids. And we get to do that. So it's one of the coolest parts is getting to just sing their praises and and speak to their individuality and their eloquence within that. And it stands out a lot of times in not just their college applications, but also in their scholarship applications that are asking for letters of rec. And we're seeing, we see the really positive results of both of those things.
Mm-hmm. How much money did our senior class earn in scholarships?
Last year's over $4 million in scholarships, and that was specifically scholarships from colleges and universities, not including external scholarships.
Right.
And I'd be pretty confident to say that this year will certainly beat that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys. Thank you for coming to talk about What's Up with College. I'm glad that What's Up with College at the Denver Waldorf School is that we are committed from day one, K1, to invest in your child, to see your child, to know your child, to push your child, and get them ready for who they're going to be in the future. And it just so turns out those are the same things that make them successful in college.
Yep.
So thank you guys.